Hansi Flick did not arrive at a Barcelona built to dominate Europe. He inherited a team full of doubts, financial limitations, and structural problems. 2 seasons later, he has turned them back into the dominant force in Spain. First came the 2025 Spanish Super Cup. Barcelona destroyed Real Madrid 5-2. Then came the Copa del Rey, another final one against Madrid, followed by the 2024-25 La Liga title. And Flick repeated it in 2026, another Spanish Super Cup against Madrid, another La Liga title. 5 trophies in 2 seasons, and even more ridiculous, 6 victories in 7 Clásicos, including all 3 finals played against Real Madrid. Flick won 88 of his first 116 matches, 75.9%, the second best winning percentage of any Barcelona manager. An absolute madness. Don't believe me? Take a look at this. His first Barcelona scored 175 goals and produced a run of 55 consecutive La Liga match days, finding the net. Camp Nou became a fortress again. Flick took the remains of the previous project and built an attacking machine. But this has to be said, there is still one trophy capable of defining his entire Barcelona era, the Champions League.
Very disappointed. It's normal. We're disappointed because
And that is where the biggest pain has come. In 2025, Barcelona reached the semi-finals and scored 6 goals across 2 matches against Inter. 6 goals, and they still went out. Inter won one of the craziest Champions League ties imaginable, 7-6 on aggregate. Then in 2026, Barcelona were eliminated in the quarter-finals again. The problem was never a lack of attacking talent, it was balance. Flick's Barcelona defend with an extremely high line and commit huge numbers forward. When the press works, opponents can barely breathe. But when possession is lost and the first pressure is beaten, enormous spaces appear, and late in matches, that risk becomes even bigger. Toni Kroos identified exactly that problem. After around the 75th minute, Barcelona could continue playing with the same aggression even when the players no longer had the physical intensity to close those spaces. That is the contradiction of Flick's football. The same bravery that makes Barcelona terrifying can also make them vulnerable. And the most frightening part is that Barcelona appear to have understood the diagnosis, because the 2026/27 Barca is different. This is no longer Flick trying to rescue the remains of somebody else's squad. He is beginning to build his own, and the new pieces directly attack the weaknesses that prevented Barcelona from conquering Europe. Rodri changes everything. He can protect the space behind the attack, manage transitions, and allow Pedri to receive higher, instead of constantly worrying about what happens behind him.
Pedri, Rodri, Rodri.
If Barcelona lose possession, Rodri can slow the counter. If the game becomes frantic, he can control the rhythm. If Pedri wants to move closer to the penalty area, Rodri can protect the base. That is exactly the kind of player Flick was missing. But this rebuild is not only about control. Anthony Gordon adds direct running, one threat and depth from the left. Karim Adeyemi gives Flick something even more explosive, pure speed. He can attack from either wing or through the centre and punish any defence brave enough to leave space behind. Then Bissou adds even more depth to the attacking group, and João Cancelo gives Flick another tactical solution from full back. He can provide width, move inside, help build midfield superiority, or become another creator higher up the pitch. Different players, different solutions. And this is no coincidence. They are not simply collecting famous names, they are reshaping the squad around what Flick actually needs. That is what should terrify the rest of Europe. Flick already won 5 trophies with a Barcelona he inherited. He already dominated Real Madrid. He already created one of the most aggressive attacking teams in Europe. And he did all of that before the squad was truly built around his football. We already know what Flick can do with a Barcelona he had to repair. Now we are about to discover what happens when Barcelona finally give him the team he actually wants. And that version of Barca could be terrifying. If Flick wants Barcelona to defend this aggressively, the goalkeeper becomes part of the entire system. Barca's defensive line plays extremely high, which means the man behind it cannot simply wait inside the penalty area. He has to defend depth, sweep behind the centre-backs, and participate in build-up almost like another outfield player. That is why Joan Garcia looks almost designed for this version of Barcelona. In La Liga 2025/26, he played 30 matches, conceded 21 goals, kept 15 clean sheets, and made 74 saves with a 77.9% save percentage. His reflexes are excellent, but the bigger value comes from everything around them. Joan is aggressive in 1-against-1 situations, comfortable leaving his box box and capable of using the ball well enough for Barcelona to maintain possession even when opponents press high. That allows Flick to push the entire team further forward. But don't get me wrong, the Champions League exposed the danger of this role. Joan conceded 14 goals in 9 matches and failed to keep a single clean sheet. That does not necessarily mean he suddenly became a worse goalkeeper. It shows what happens when Barcelona's first press is beaten and opponents can attack the enormous space behind the defensive line with an advantage. Joan can save Flick's structure. He cannot always save it when the structure completely disappears. And that is exactly why Barcelona's new midfield balance matters so much. If players like Rodri can slow transitions before they become open races towards goal, Joan should face fewer situations where the opponent arrives with time, space and numbers. Behind him, Flick also has experience. Wojciech Szczęsny has played more than 500 professional matches and brings enormous European experience to one of the youngest squads in elite football. He gives Barcelona a second goalkeeper who can enter chaotic or decisive matches without needing weeks to adapt to the pressure. That leadership also matters. This Barcelona has extraordinary talent, but many of its most important players are still extremely young. Szczęsny provides another voice capable of managing moments when Flick's aggressive football becomes emotionally and tactically difficult. And then there is Eder Aller. At only 19 years old and 1.94 metres, he represents the next step. His reflexes, aggressive starting positions, interpretation of space and ability with the ball already fit the profile Barcelona want from their goalkeepers. That gives Flick 3 completely different stages of the same position. That is the real purpose of this goalkeeping unit. Not simply to protect the goal, to protect the risk. Barcelona's defensive problem is not a lack of individual quality. In La Liga 2025/26, Flick's team conceded 36 goals in 38 matches. The real danger appears when the press fails and the defensive line is still sitting 40 or 50 metres away from Joan Garcia. That is when the centre-backs are forced to run towards their own goal, and this is no coincidence. Flick's system needs defenders capable of anticipating, defending forwards and building under pressure, but it also depends on the attackers and midfielders staying close enough together so the high line is never abandoned. Pau Cubarsí is the brain of that structure. At only 19, he played 48 matches, completed around 92.4% of his passes, recovered 104 balls, and made 147 clearances in La Liga. His biggest value is not simply defending, it is anticipation. Cubarsí reads the next action early and can break the first line with vertical passes from deep. When Barcelona dominate territory, that allows him to step forward and keep the opponent trapped. Beside him, Koundé provides something different. Recovery speed, one defending, the physical capacity to protect huge spaces. He can operate as the deeper fullback beside Lamine Yamal or become the right centre-back when Flick wants to build with 3. And that flexibility continues with Eric Garcia and Gerard Martin. Eric played 51 matches and recorded 48 interceptions and 113 recoveries. He can move between right back, centre back and even midfield without forcing Flick to rebuild the entire structure. Gerard also reached 51 appearances and won around 68% of his aerial duels. As a left-footed centre-back, he can protect the space behind an attacking fullback and give the team more balance. But don't get me wrong, the biggest strength is not having 11 fixed starters. It is having defenders capable of changing the structure during the same match. The fullbacks explain that perfectly. Alejandro Balde gives Barcelona acceleration and natural width. If Gordon or Rafinha move inside, Balde can attack the entire left corridor and stretch the defensive line. João Cancelo can do almost the opposite. With 2 goals and 4 assists in 23 matches during 2025/26, Cancelo can leave the touchline and enter midfield, creating another passing option around the centre. And the depth is also there. Christensen offers experience, aerial ability and 94.7% passing accuracy in La Liga. Álvaro Cortés brings a 1.90 metre left-footed profile. Xavi Espart can develop into an inverted fullback, and Jordi Pesca gives Flick another attacking option from La Masia. Different profiles, different solutions. That is the real defensive upgrade Flick needs for the Champions League. Barcelona do not necessarily need to defend deeper, they need to defend their high line better, and if Rodri gives them the control that was missing before, the same aggressive defence that sometimes exposed Barcelona could become one of the reasons this new team is finally ready for Europe. Barcelona's midfield may be the area that completely changes the ceiling of Flick's team. Not because Pedri, Frenkie de Jong, Gavi or Casado lacked quality. The problem was that too many of them were being asked to build, progress, recover, protect transitions and still arrive in the final third. Rodri changes that distribution of responsibility. And this is no coincidence. Instead of sharing the pivot role between several different players, Flick finally has a specialist capable of organising everything around him. Rodri is the structural piece. He arrives after 298 matches with Manchester City, 14 major trophies, a Champions League, a Ballon d'Or and a 2026 World Cup, where he completed 756 passes at 93.2% accuracy and made 26 tackles. But his real value begins before the tackle. Rodri positions himself before possession is lost. He protects the central corridor, controls second balls, directs the press, and allows Barcelona to remain 40 or 50 metres from their own goal without leaving the centre-backs completely exposed. That attacks Flick's biggest weakness directly. Rodri becomes the central node. He attracts pressure, switches play, and decides when Barcelona need to accelerate or slow everything down. The longer Barca can circulate around him, the shorter the distances between teammates become. So Rodri can improve the attack and the defence at the same time. And then there is Pedri. In 2025/26, Pedri played 43 matches, produced 9 assists, and incredibly made 163 recoveries in La Liga, more than any other Barcelona midfielder. That tells you how much structural work he was carrying. With Rodri behind him, Pedri no longer needs to play part-time Busquets. He can become much closer to Iniesta again, receive higher, combine around Lamine, find the final pass, appear more often around the box. And the most frightening part is that we may still not have seen the most attacking version of Pedri. Frenkie de Jong gives Flick another completely different solution. He completed around 91.2% of his league passes and remains Barcelona's best midfielder for escaping pressure through carrying. That means Flick can use Rodri-Pedri when he wants control, Rodri-Frenkie when opponents press aggressively, or even all three when he wants complete dominance of midfield. Gavi could become one of the biggest beneficiaries without the ball. His 2025/26 numbers were affected by the 205 days he spent injured, but his game has never depended on goals and assists. He presses, chases, competes, jumps aggressively onto receivers. A Rodri-Gavi-Pedri midfield could combine positional control, creativity, and an enormous capacity to keep opponents trapped after losing possession. Then come the midfielders, who are almost attackers. Dani Olmo finished with 7 goals and 8 assists in La Liga and remains a specialist between the lines. If Gordon and Adeyemi stretch the defence, the interior spaces Olmo loves should become even bigger. Fermin is even more vertical. 13 goals, 17 assists, 30 direct goal contributions in 48 matches. But don't get me wrong, Fermin is not really a traditional interior midfielder anymore. He attacks the gap between fullback and centre-back, makes runs into the box, presses centre-backs, and increasingly moves like a second striker. Flick can even use him as a false 9 when the game demands it. Marc Bernal adds another possibility. At 1.93 metres, he returned after 383 days injured and still scored 4 goals in 25 matches. Rodri does not necessarily block his development. He may actually protect it. Bernal can learn from Rodri and potentially develop as a more physical interior with freedom to attack the area. Then there is the depth. Casado gives Flick intensity and tempo from the rotation. Fariñas arrives after 5 goals and 7 assists with Barca Athletic. Tunkara, at only 16, offers unpredictability between the lines. And Goran represents another technical La Masia project. That is the madness of this midfield. Flick no longer has one combination, he has several, and Rodri is the player who can connect all of it. That is why his arrival is bigger than simply replacing one midfielder with another. Barcelona do not need to remove the chaos that makes Flick's football terrifying. They finally have a midfielder who may allow them to control it. Barcelona's attack is probably where you can see Flick's evolution most clearly. Before, Barca could produce extraordinary numbers, but too many matches still depended on Lamine Yamal or Rafinha, creating something from individual quality. Now Flick keeps both of them and adds profiles designed to solve completely different problems. Speed, depth, pressing, width, carrying, and penalty box presence. And this is no coincidence. Lamine remains the gravitational centre. In 2025/26, he produced 24 goals and 18 assists in 45 matches, including 16 goals and 12 assists in La Liga alone. He begins wide on the right and immediately forces the opponent to make a decision. Leave him 1 against 1 and he can eliminate the fullback, send help towards him, and suddenly Pedri, Fermin, Rafinha, or the striker are free somewhere else. But the most frightening part is that Flick no longer has to keep Lamine there permanently. With Adeyemi or Barca maintaining width on the right, Lamine can move inside as a number 10 or even appear as a false 9 without Barcelona losing the structure around him. Rafinha provides the other half of the chaos. He finished 20-25/26 with 21 goals and 8 assists in only 33 appearances. But his tactical value goes far beyond production. He presses centre-backs, tracks pivots, attacks gaps and constantly runs behind the defensive line. For Flick, the first defender is often an attacker. Rafinha represents that perfectly, and if Anthony Gordon maintains width on the left, Rafinha can move even more freely inside and become almost a second striker or false 9. His intensity, sacrifice and personality are not simply emotional qualities. Flick converts them directly into tactical behaviour. Then come Gordon and Karim Adeyemi. This is where the new Barcelona becomes genuinely frightening. Gordon produced 17 goals and 5 assists in 46 matches, including an absurd 10 goals in 12 Champions League games. He also reached 37.92 km/h. Adeyemi added 10 goals and 6 assists and can also exceed 35 km/h. Think about what that does to an opponent. Press Barcelona high and you leave 30 or 40 metres behind your defensive line for Gordon and Adeyemi to attack. Drop deeper to protect that space and suddenly Rodri, Pedri and Lamine have more time between the lines. That is exactly the dilemma Flick wanted to create. Gordon can stay wide on the left, attack depth or move inside. Adeyemi can operate from either wing or through the centre and turn one recovery into a dangerous transition within seconds. Barcelona no longer need 20 passes every time they want to hurt you. Rooney Barca offers something different. His 2 goals and 4 assists in 873 minutes may not look spectacular, but his role is extremely valuable. He does not need to become another Lamine. He needs to preserve the structure when Lamine rests. Left-footed from the right, Barca can maintain width, drive inside and create against deeper defences. Across a season of more than 50 matches, that kind of rotation can become enormous. Jesse Bissou adds the unpredictable factor. His professional sample is still small, but the profile is obvious. Speed, power and carrying ability. His 2 goals against Basel in pre-season already showed how dangerous he can become once the opponent starts tiring. He can become the weapon introduced when the match begins to break. And then there is Hamza Abdelkarim, probably the most fascinating profile in the entire attack. Hamza is the only truly natural number 9 in the group, and he finished pre-season as Barcelona's top scorer with 4 goals, including 2 against Birmingham. While Gordon, Adeyemi, Fermin, Rafinha or Lamine can occupy the centre through movement, Hamza thinks differently. He thinks like a striker. He pins centre-backs, plays with his back to goal, attacks rebounds, runs towards the near post, and finishes with very few touches. The madness is in the combinations Flick can now create. That is the real transformation. Barcelona no longer have one attacking formula, they have several, and for the Champions League that variety could become decisive. Barcelona enter 2026/27 with a squad that is deeper, more flexible and better prepared to face different types of opponents. Rodri gives Flick the control that was missing. Gordon and Adeyemi multiply the speed of the attack. Lamine Yamal and Rafinha remain the main references, and La Masia continues adding even more solutions. But don't get me wrong, there is still one enormous question: the number 9. Hamza scored 4 goals in pre-season, and players like Rafinha, Gordon, Fermin or Olmo can occupy that position, but Flick still wants a top-level striker, and the transfer window is not over. Julian Alvarez now looks almost impossible because Atletico refused to sell. Lautaro Martinez has emerged as the major target, with Barcelona considering an operation close to 90 million euros, while Nicolo Tresoldi represents a younger and cheaper alternative. Victor Osimhen and Nick Woltemade have also appeared as possible opportunities if the market opens. And if Deco manages to solve that final piece, the madness could be complete. Barcelona would have talent, speed, control, experience, depth and tactical variety throughout the squad. Flick already proved what he could do with the team he inherited. Now he has a Barcelona increasingly built around what he wants. And if the final number 9 arrives, Flick may finally have almost everything he needs to take Barca where the supporters really want them, back to the top of the Champions League. That is why the new Barcelona is terrifying.